Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1557A, and today's date is May 1st, 2018, and the title of the episode is Both Sides Wait for the Other to Make a Move on the Economy. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, we know around the world the housing market, well, it is basically falling apart. And we're seeing signs in many different countries, not just the United States, but other countries. We've also seen signs where the Fed has pushed inflation to other parts of the world. And I believe that one of these places is Canada, because we've been seeing this housing bubble being pumped up, and all of a sudden right now, Canada is in serious trouble. And what we're seeing right now is that the moment of truth for Canada's all-important housing market is at hand. And the reason for this is because, well, we can see rates are rising. Banks have been pushing up mortgage rates. And we see also that a lot of the mortgages, they are coming due. And this is going to be a huge problem. And this is also pushing a lot of individuals out of the market. Now, the economy has never been as levered as it currently is. And the economy is far more interest sensitive than it has been in the past, to a degree that we don't have certainty over how each interest rate hike is going to affect Canadian consumers. All we know is it's going to be very painful when everything starts to completely fall apart. And here's why. Canada will no longer be able to avoid the troubling reality of rising rates. The country is entering a period in which no less than 47% of existing mortgages need to be refinanced this year versus 25 to 35% typically. And the pain for Canadian homeowners appears unavoidable. Now, according to Statistics Canada, total payments on debt made by the Canadian households rose by 6.7% in the fourth quarter from a year earlier, and the interest paid component climbed 9.2%. Those were the biggest gains since the financial crisis. And if we look at the UK, we can see we have problems there. Home ownership rate for millennials aged 25 to 34 has nearly halved in some of the regions of Britain, showing that the housing affordability crisis extends far beyond the boundaries of London. Again, what they've done was they created these gigantic bubbles. They pumped it up, and wages, they haven't kept up with inflation on housing, and it pushed a lot of people out of the market. Now, as you raise interest rates, even more people are being pushed out of the market. And this is why we said here in the United States, Fannie and Freddie, they decided to basically take the 3% mortgage down and do a no-income check because they're trying to bring as many people into the housing market before the whole thing completely falls apart. Because what do these people need to do right now? They need to unload their real estate. This is what happens. They sell when it's very high. They buy when it's really cheap. They sell when it's very high. And basically, they unload it right before everything starts to fall apart. It's almost the same as the stock market, where those institutional investors, the insiders, they know they're pumping it up. And when it reaches a certain point, they want all the retail investors in saying, listen, it's going to go higher. It's going to hit 100,000. Everyone get in now. And they unload their stocks. They make their profits. And the rest of the people, they get into the market. They buy their stocks and everything starts to fall apart. And out in Britain, there was a report that was conducted over 2 years, an investigation into the intergenerational fairness in Britain. And the think tank Resolution Foundation, which was directed by former university's Minister David Willetts, the team discovered that overpriced homes in Britain had forced millennials into increasingly cramped and expensive rented properties that leave them with a longer commute and little chance for saving for a home. And it shows that home ownership is collapsing there. And there's a problem in Canada. There's a problem in the United States. There's a problem throughout Europe. The whole thing is one gigantic bubble, and it's getting ready to pop. Now, here in the United States, the U.S. economic expansion now becomes the outright second longest in history, with data going back over 164 years and 34 business cycles. According to Deutsche Bank's calculation, 107 months, the current expansion just nudged ahead of the long 1960s expansion and will beat the 90s expansion for the title of the longest expansion in history if it extends past July of next year. Now, the CBO came out with their report, and they're saying they're not expecting to have any type of recession anytime soon, and I think we're not going to have anything until December 31st, 2028. Now, think about this for a second. They're trying to tell us that this economy is so strong, that everything is so great, that everyone's getting jobs, that we're not going to have anything go wrong for another 10 years. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, you know that they're going to be completely wrong. Because as we can see, the entire thing is getting ready to completely come down. And the reasons we know this is because we've been looking at all these indicators. Most of them are pointing to a recession. We see the yield curve. We see what is happening with the housing market, not just here in the United States, but in Canada and out in the UK. We know that Europe is a complete mess. We know the banks are insolvent. And they're trying to convince us that we have another 10 years before everything just completely falls apart. Whenever you ever seen a cycle go that long? And to keep it going, well, guess what? They're going to have to do other things. And that's going to be completely impossible because, as we know, Trump is trying to bring down the economy. Blame it on the Fed. The Fed's trying to bring down the economy. Blame it on Trump. And there's no way that they can keep this illusion alive. Remember, this whole thing is based on an illusion. Back prior to 2008, before the crash happened, everyone believed that this would never, ever end, that housing prices would continually move up, that we wouldn't have a problem in the housing market, that the stock market would continually move up. We wouldn't have a problem there. Corporations were fine. The subprime securities, they're all AAA. We didn't have any problems. Everyone thought this was going to last forever. And then what happened? Everything completely fell apart. We see inflation warning lights right now. They're flashing as manufacturing prices soar since 2011. And we can see right now that inflation has been offloaded out into the real estate market, into the stock market, into education, out into other countries. And as we can see with the petro-yuan, the birth of the petro-yuan, well, this is a complete and utter game changer. With cryptocurrencies coming into the fold, this is a game changer. All of these things are happening at once. Now, we know that the Fed, they are trying to push the economy, gain the narrative. And we talked about the narrative and what that means. Just like in the 1970s, the central banks, they had the narrative. This is why they were able to tell us the story that there were gold speculators. We need to come off the gold standard. We have a shortage of oil because they were moving on to the petrodollar. So they had the narrative back then. They're trying to control the narrative this time. We also have Trump, the Patriots behind him, trying to control the narrative of what the economy is doing. Now, Trump has decided to postpone the decision about imposing steel and aluminum tariffs on the European Union and other U.S. allies until June 1st. And we see also that the Fed, they decided not to raise interest rates right now. And they're saying they're not going to be raising them before the mid-2018 time period. Now, this is very interesting because both of them kind of halted on what they were doing. And they're watching each other to see who makes the next move. Remember, this is a battle that is going on right now, where each one is trying to control the narrative. And while Trump is trying to bring down the economy and blame it on the Fed, he's also preparing the entire system for the transition. Because we will be transitioning away from the Federal Reserve System, which is the central banking system. This system that we are in right now, the economic system, is not a people's system. That's why when you pick up a dollar bill or $10 bill or $20 bill, it says Federal Reserve note. This is a central banking system. They created it, they designed it, they control it, and they keep the illusion alive. Today, we need to continually play in their system while we work on other systems, and that's where the cryptocurrency market comes in, because that's outside of their system. Gold and silver is outside of their system, and they hate anything that is outside of their system. And this is why they are demonizing both cryptocurrency and gold, silver, and everything else, because they don't want anyone to catch on to what those really are. This is why they've been telling people that the dollar is the place to be. The dollar is backed by the full faith and credit of the United States. The dollar is king. This is why they continually do this, because they want everyone convinced, brainwashed, to think that gold and silver is absolutely meaningless. Today, cryptocurrency is absolutely meaningless. You don't need them whatsoever. And they're going to continue to do this over time. Now, what's going to happen is that as we move towards this transition, things are going to change rapidly. And they know this, and this is why they've been pushing so hard. But we are going to be going through this transition. We are going to see inflation, and everything's going to start to fall apart, just like we're seeing it fall apart in Canada, the UK, the United States, and this is going to accelerate. And we're going to see this move forward as we enter the latter part of this year. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.